From First Nations chiefs pressuring the province to end the separation debate to Alberta MP seeking to become leader of the federal NDP. And time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Sarah Elder, founder of the political fashion brand Madam Premier, host of the Briefing Note podcast and a former political staffer, and Barry Morishita, former leader of the Alberta Party and former mayor of Brooks. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with tension at the legislature Monday over an NDP motion for a non-confidence vote on the issue of separation that was quickly shut down by the government. It was a motion First Nations chiefs came to the legislature to support.
We are doing something that we will not stand for any of this talk of separation. We knew that the vote wouldn't pass. We knew what we were in for when we came to this legislature. We've seen it time and time again, the disrespect that the MLAs have for our people in those rooms.
First Nations leaders say a potential referendum question on separation infringes on treaty rights, which they say were signed with the Crown and not with Alberta. A First Nations delegation will also be at Buckingham Palace tomorrow to invite the King to the upcoming 150th anniversary of Treaty 6 and to remind him of the obligation to uphold treaty rights against separatist threats. Sarah, I'll start with you. The Assembly of Treaty Chiefs of Treaty 6, 7, and 8 recently passed their own vote of non-confidence in the UCP government. To what degree should the Smith government be sitting up and taking note of First Nations pushback?
I would imagine that the Smith government is absolutely taking note of that and of the events yesterday. But I mean, to be honest, there is no separation referendum. There is no question. So all of this right now to me is discussion and dialogue, whether you like it, agree with it or not. It's happening. It can't, the process is playing out right now in the courts, both in the courts and in the legislature and with these different referendum questions. So all of this is a little bit premature to say, that there is a guaranteed outcome to any of this, because as far as I can tell, Alberta is still a province within Canada. This is all still playing out. And so I can understand as much as I can, the concern from the First Nations chiefs about this. I too am concerned as an Albertan and as a Canadian. But I think, just need to take down the tone a little bit and just take a breath and just, talk to each other a little bit more.
Barry, what value is there in the NDP attempting to push forward a vote of non-confidence? UCP shut it down within 13 minutes, and they called the motion a political stunt.
Well, I think the NDP are trying to find some traction that they can lead here in Alberta, that they can be kind of the go-to. Polls are showing them neck and neck, and quite frankly, Nahid Nenshi hasn't kind of set himself apart. He hasn't brought some focus to his leadership. So I think they're looking for things like that. And I think they're trying to take advantage of Premier Smith's kind of dichotomy of her dialogue. On one place, she says, they're going to help with the language, make it constitutional. And another one, she says she knows it's unconstitutional. So, I think they're trying to take advantage of that. Sarah brings up a good point that there's a lot of politics and speculation, and everybody's trying to gain a little edge from this. I think the NDP actually have an opportunity here during this part of the debate to show their leadership here in Alberta, but I don't think the tactics of Godshow are going to serve them long term. You might make it a headline on the news tonight, but I don't think long term Albertans are going to really be attracted to that.
Sarah, outside the political sphere, Treaty 6 leadership taking concerns directly to the King at Buckingham Palace tomorrow. How might that change this whole dialogue around separation and a possible referendum question?
Well, the treaties were signed with the Crown, so that is the other signatory in this situation. However, I think we've seen a reluctantness on behalf of King Charles to engage on this issue directly. Obviously, everything that he does is tries to be more than arm's length from anything political. So him coming and speaking to the House of Commons, for example, that might be as much as we get. It might be as much as the chiefs get without, a firm declaration of something, because I would imagine that his talking points are going to be a lot like the ones that I just gave. which are that this process will play out and that nothing has happened, and they respect treaties and all of these other things. But it could just end up being that the likelihood of the separation referendum completely failing. It seems like they're having a really hard time gathering the signatures needed. So again, all of this in terms of talking about a predetermined outcome are premature because the processes haven't played out. Should they have even started is another question, and that's not the one that we're discussing right now.
All right. Next up, we heard from Alberta MP Heather McPherson off the top on her bid to become leader of the federal NDP now that online voting is underway and the outcome is to be known by the end of the month. Barry, she's the lone elected member of Parliament in this race. How much of a difference do you expect that experience to make when it comes to party members picking their next leader?
Well, I think it should make a difference. I think one of the problems we have in our system is we don't grow people into it. People appear and then, kind of flame out. I think the NDP, and I've been impressed with Heather's campaign and kind of her growth during the leadership campaign. I think she'd be a strong spokesperson for them. So I think having a seat in the House of Commons is extremely important. We saw how that affected it locally here when Naheed became the leader and had to wait several months before he had his opportunity. So I think it tactically, strategically, it makes sense to that's an advantage for her, and we'll see how it plays out in the actual vote.
Sarah, fundraising tallies put Avi Lewis out front at roughly $1.2 million. Heather McPherson in second. I believe it's roughly half of that amount. How predictive is fundraising when it comes to the outcome of leadership races?
It's one metric. It's not necessarily the metric, and depends. I think momentum and messaging are ultimately more important, in my opinion. And I have to say, listening to Heather McPherson's comments, talking about fighting for the working class, fighting with their cousin provincial political parties for the things that they both believe in. That really leaves me asking, what is it they actually believe in? She was very non-committal on answering, giving a specific yes or no answer on a pipeline. Both her and Nenshi, if they're cousins, then what is the position? This is an amazing opportunity for any party running against a government or a political party, an NDP provincial political party, because you're saying your cousins, that you're aligned in your priorities, that your messaging, all of these things, your values are aligned. I'm sorry, but the federal NDP is unelectable with their current raft of parties or policies. And so it's provincial parties that are winning. It's the federal NDP that should be taking a page from their book, not the other way around.
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, the Prime Minister taking heat for not attending a House of Commons debate on conflict in the Middle East. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. MPs took their seats in the House of Commons last night to debate the war in Iran, and it was without the Prime Minister.
In this time of crisis, Canadians deserve to know where the Prime Minister stands. Indeed, they deserve to know where the Prime Minister is.
In the recent military strikes carried out by the United States and Israel, we were not consulted in advance about these operations, and we have no intention of joining them.
With the Prime Minister's absence, opposition parties were left to question the government's position on the Middle East conflict. Mark Carney has been criticized over a series of shifting statements about the war since it started last month. The Foreign Affairs Minister says Canada condemns attacks on civilians and that international law must be respected. Sarah, how warranted is the opposition in calling out the PM for not taking part last night? Should this be considered, Mark Carney, hiding from debate?
Absolutely. This is something that is very close and a very personal issue for me. My husband is originally from Iran. We have a lot of extended family still in Iran. And I myself am a dual citizen of both Canada and Iran. So I speak from the heart and I speak from a place of actually understanding what's going on in a way that most people don't. I'm really disappointed that the Prime Minister wasn't there. His position has changed numerous times between both him and Anita Anand, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I find that to be incredibly disappointing and frustrating because I can tell you what the Persian Canadian community wants right now, and that is that they want the support of the Canadian government in standing by them at this very critical time in the hope of actually seeing change come to the Iranian regime. Because for the last 47 years, the people of Iran have been oppressed by a theocratic dictatorship that has taken absolutely no mercy in torturing its own citizens, up until even including in January when estimates between 30 to 40,000 people were slaughtered by their own government simply for the right to protest. Iranians have been dying for decades, and the Prime Minister should do the right thing and get onto the side of the people of Iran and not the regime.
Barry, the Blockhouse leader said Monday the PM's absence reflects a general lack of interest in Parliament since becoming Prime Minister last year. How much of a point is to be made in that regard?
Well, I think Prime Minister Carney has to be careful that what the accusations being tossed his way don't stick to him. I think it's a difficult thing to deal with a president of the U.S. In this particular situation because he is trying to walk a tightrope when it comes to the messaging that is perceived internationally. I certainly agree with Sarah that Canada has always been on the side of a regime change and wanted to get rid of this regime that's in Iran at this point. So it kind of baffles me a little bit why he can't be a bit more consistent on that regard. But I think he does have to be careful. He can't appear to be disinterested in these things, but he also has to make sure that he's not getting on the wrong side of a president who seems to toss around economic bombs at a time that's when Canada can least afford to have them tossed their way. So it's a tough situation to be in, but he does have the value system that he purports to have, and I think he'd be well served by sticking to those.
And Sarah, to pick up on your earlier points, PM in the House for this debate or not? How necessary was the addition of this conversation on the Middle East conflict in the first place? What do you see it being needed for? What would it accomplish?
You know, I think that this was really just kind of performatory in terms of, giving the appearance of having MPs weigh in on this when, the decisions aren't made in the House of Commons on this. They're coming from the Prime Minister. That's the issue. The Prime Minister's messaging and that of his ministers has been extremely inconsistent, from being apparently at one point supportive when he was in Australia, I believe it was, to, even going as far as contemplating Canada becoming involved. And I have to say, that really resonated with me. And again, that really resonated, I think, with a lot of people in the Persian community, because either you're on the side of a regime that has for 47 years systematically targeted its own citizens in every single way. I can't even begin for people to understand. For the crime of being gay in Tehran or in Iran, you will be hung up by a crane publicly. Is that what we are saying, in taking a hands-off approach to this conflict? Are we saying that we're actually okay with that happening in and around the world? I guess if it's just about economics, but I really appreciate the moral clarity from Pierre Poilievre, and this has changed my political views, my political allegiances, like nothing else has. It's really, really solidified what my political position is, because I absolutely want consistent, clear messaging from political leadership in Canada, and the Prime Minister is not demonstrating it.
Okay, we're out of time. We have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.